With me today is Kris Grant. Kris is the mother of 2 children and 2 fur babies, and in her spare time is the CEO of ASPL Group, a management consultancy, training and recruitment firm that operates across the private and public sectors in Australia and Asia Pacific. Welcome, Kris, and thanks for joining me today.
No problems at all, and lovely to meet you, Christy.
Okay, so before we get on to how you arrived at ASPL Group, I first wanted to talk to you about your education. Now, you completed a Bachelor of Business Accountancy at RMIT University, so I was curious to know what made you select that degree.
My parents actually really wanted me to go with a business degree, believe it or not. I actually was more passionate about something like journalism and just really trying to find my way. But honestly, it's given me really good stead for obviously my career.
So how important do you think education is to the success that you've had?
Look, it was just more so a good grounding, to be honest. Like, I obviously went and I studied accounting. I don't really use it at all anymore, but it was a fabulous, I went into BHP as a grad, and it really, apart from learning a lot and being thrown into the deep end, it was really good to have as obviously something to commence my career in.
And obviously BHP was a fantastic organisation for you to be able to start with. Can you tell us how you secured that grad role and what it entailed?
Yes, obviously I went through the whole process. It was really bizarre, to be honest, now I look back on it, because there was hardly any female leaders. And I was obviously in their accounting team for their first SAP rollout. And believe it or not, it was quite common for us to work around the clock, which is just unheard of these days. So from a process perspective, it was just like, the standard, psychometric testing, a lot of behavioural interviews, which hasn't really evolved that much right now.
So just on those psychometric and behavioural testing, what are your thoughts on them? Do you think that they are a good indicator of how the candidate is going to perform in a role, or do you think it's sort of a tick-the-box type exercise?
I think the challenge is that we all know sometimes what the answer should be. So I'm sure you're aware that my passion is around leadership, and obviously in government especially. And I kind of like to say now, well, how do you actually hire for high performance and for leadership? Obviously behavioural interviews help. The challenge is you've really got to delve in and use your EQ to see if it's actually relevant, and make sure that whoever you're hiring has that capability set.
Okay, we'll get to leadership in government in a minute, but I first wanted to chat to you about your ascent, I suppose, throughout the years. Now, you reached your first C-level role at the ripe old age of 32, so which is exceptionally young, as for a woman as well. And you had 2 young children, which is really impressive to be able to, first get that role and to have a family as you're doing it as well. So what attributes do you think you have that has contributed to your success?
I think that I have always been really passionate about doing the right thing for whatever organisation I was working for. So it was sheer grit to get there, honestly. And it was I was the first female C-level, so that was challenging enough. But I always tried to do the right thing by the organisation. I wasn't really like, wow, I need to get to my next step. It was more so, I need to do the right thing at all times. And when I coach or say anything to anyone coming through, I always say that's probably how I got there quite young.
Yeah, and obviously I had pretty young.
Yeah, it was pretty young. It was crazy. I can't tell you how crazy it was. I'm a little bit more saying that I have high energy. I treat myself like an athlete, but it was pretty crazy with the kids being young. I was a single mum too, so it was definitely a crazy time in my life, but it was very rewarding in many ways as well. And I learned
in that role, well, you would have, because I believe you led a team of, more than 50,000 staff throughout Asia Pacific as a CFO and COO. of a global talent management firm. So how different is a role like that as opposed to a role within an SME?
People are people, so it's very similar. It was challenging because I reported into the US, so that was good and bad. And I reported to and had a lot of board experience. So I reported into a board because we didn't have a CEO at that time, and that was incredible. Like I had an awesome mentor who set up the company in Australia, and so I learned so much. But I also learned what not to do as well, to be honest. Like I just really stuck to my guns. I remember one of my mentors saying, Kris, the higher up you go, the more HR you're going to deal with. And he was spot on.
Yeah. And why do you think it takes up so much of your time as you sort of go up through those roles, the HR aspect of it?
I think people are really complex, like they're more complex than ever. And when I was leading, all those kind of work, bullying claims were coming through, and it just absolutely absorbed our time. And trying to actually get your culture is not something you can turn around in 5 minutes. It takes time, unfortunately. You've got to be consistent. You've got to try and get your right leaders in place, and then they've got to kind of replicate some of your values. And like I mean, I've got it now with ASPL, and some of my team have been with for 5 or 6 years, but it does take time. So the larger the scale, the harder it is.
Absolutely. And what have also been hard is obviously raising those two young children whilst you did that.
Oh, my beautiful A's. You know that I've got Amy, Adam, Apple, and Angel. I am a bit obsessed with the
A. What's with the A's? Is there a special connection? Or is it just to keep it simple?
Well, I am half French, so Amy, who's my first, is obviously spelled with meaning love. But no, there was no. It just happened that way. Everyone asks me that all the time.
Yeah, I saw all the A's and I thought, well, there might be a connection. Who knows? So, do you think that you can have it all, or do you think that you have to sacrifice, and you just choose those sacrifices being a working mum?
Look, if I knew now some of what I teach, such as self-reflection and neuroscience, and being a high achiever, I was one to always overthink everything. And I felt totally compromised with trying to be it all for my kids, trying to be the best employee, trying to, be the best partner. And I remember when I went into therapy when I was younger, they were like, Kris, where did you get this wanting to be the best at everything? So yes, it's definitely a compromise, and I really try and share some of what I've learnt. And if I was to go backwards, and I'm not one to obviously regret anything, but I did overthink everything. I was exceptionally young, and I looked young too, which didn't help, I don't think. And even like some of the mums that weren't working were really challenging as well. Like they put a lot of pressure on. And saying that, my kids were, and I'm incredibly close to the two of them, so they grew up in boardrooms, and I used to bring them into the office, and it certainly had an impact. But they're both just such hard workers themselves, so they've kind of got that ethic as well, and they just really appreciate the fact that I worked. So it's funny, in hindsight, you worry so much about not spending enough time with them. And I'm a true believer in conscious behaviour, but it is amazing if you follow and you are passionate and they've seen that, how much they appreciate it.
So obviously now, throughout COVID, we've seen a lot of flexible work, and workplaces are really starting to adapt to the idea of flexible work. But women have been trying to grapple with flexible work for such a long time. So how difficult was it when you were first starting out, as opposed to now, to try and get your employers to understand the benefit of having those flexible work arrangements, especially for working parents?
I think it's really interesting, Christy, because I think there's two challenges here. Firstly, a lot of the times, and we obviously have flexible working conditions because it's one of my passions, but a lot of times when I actually say to someone, if you want to do 6 hours because you want to pick up the kids or study or whatever, I actually think they're thinking that I'm saying I want you to do 8 hours.
Yep.
So we've all grown up going, you need to do more and more and more. And so even if you offer flexibility, the mindset of sometimes your employees is that you're actually saying, I want more. So that kind of needs to shift. And I think with the younger gens coming through, they kind of get it more. They definitely are more diverse and they want flexibility. The other challenge we've got in our country is that there's just such a significant push from government for them to go back into the offices. So for the first time, I think, and government used to be, the leading the way with flexibility, whereas now private organisations are. So when we say flexibility, we hire people all over the country. Really, really good for diversity. So you think about somewhere like, and I've spent a lot of time up in Darwin for Indigenous, for example, they have to go back to their communities. It's just part of their traditions, and that's one positive out of COVID, that they can, they can do everything remotely. But I think government needs to actually think about their mixed messages with what they're doing.
So why do you think that is? Do you think it's more because they're trying to encourage people back into those CBD areas to basically, fill up those office buildings and get the money back in flowing for those larger organisations that own the buildings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that. And I also think that they have traditional hierarchical organisations that want to have that command and control and want to see their people in front of them.
And so what do you think that I suppose the workers should be able to do to try and get that shift sort of happening with them?
I think that they have to have, honest conversations, and if it works more effectively, I always say we practice what we preach. So especially for my Melbourne team, because we've gone through so many endless lockdowns, I always say to them, let's actually plan to go back into the office and do things like incidental learning, collaboration, and then because they really like working from home, they can work from home the rest of the week. So instead of just replicating the same from home to the office, we've actually mixed it up. So every Monday we go into the office and we do workshops, we do, learning, whatever it may be, together for like 4 or 5 hours, and then everyone works from home the rest of the week.
So do you think organisations will get left behind, the ones that aren't, adapting to the new way of sort of working? Do you think they'll be left in the dark?
Yeah, because the market is very tight right now from a labour perspective. A lot of people are quite risk averse, so not leaving roles. So the talent war has begun between, government and a large corps. So the more that you can kind of offer, the greater the greater the opportunity for the employees that you're potentially hiring.
Now, as a leader, as I said before, you led 50,000 people, and now with ASPL, it's not quite so many, but you're still leading a number of people. Do you feel personally responsible for those people? Where does that connection between responsibility and employer sort of end? Or leader?
You've got to kind of, I always say, because I think I definitely felt more responsible when I was younger. I always say they're not my children. So I'm really, really big on, I want to lead people to be successful. So you have to, it depends on what your passion is, but I'm all about success. But sometimes that isn't for everyone. And you know what? It's kind of like a breakup conversation if it's not. I'm really open about it. I'm not for everyone, and ASPL Group isn't for everyone either. We are quite unique in what we offer to the market and what we do. And not everyone's geared for that.
So tell me about how you ended up with ASPL Group.
So after 7 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. In my last role, I was like, I can't change an 80-year-old male. What am I doing?
Why not? Why can't you change that?
I know, I tried for a long time. And I was like, looking at another firm and was like, I just don't know if I want to replicate and, work for more, demographic older men who are really difficult to change. And the market was shifting, so recruitment has become quite commoditized. And I was like, I'd rather go into something a little bit fresher. And for years and years, obviously, I had consultants and tier one consultants, obviously, that we used. And I was so frustrated by their lack of ability to make anything stick. And I mean, they bring in a director and you get the grads and off you go and you're not getting real value. So I got offered this opportunity and it's smaller, obviously. And so I was in two minds going, I've gone really large scale. It's going to be hard to build and it's a completely different environment. And it's been incredible.
That's amazing.
So it was the right decision for me.
Was it difficult to make that switch from such a large organization though?
I just didn't have all the politics that I had. So yes, it was difficult to switch because I had such a strong brand behind me before. So we had to basically build from scratch. So it's just different types of challenges. But then once I got going, I was fine. I was like, this is incredible. I didn't waste any time. I used to, I was just so back to it. I'm back to back now, but I was so trying to, especially doing a global role, I was just completely inundated with work. And I was, in hindsight, I just kept doing more and more and more rather than trying to look at, well, how can I be more effective? I just was working like a workhorse. And so it was nice to just kind of sit back a bit and go, which is what I do, and self-reflect and go, how can I be more effective as a leader? And that's obviously how we created our leadership arm.
So tell us about ASPL Group, what you are and what you do.
So we have 3 service lines. We have a recruitment service line. It's completely different to what I led. I'm really, really passionate about inclusion and diversity. You probably saw that we have a campaign going for the last 18 months, which is We Lead, which is all around amplifying the voices of many to look at equality a little bit more closely. And our recruitment arm is really looking at EQ skills as well, so not just technical skills. We've got a whole base of psychologists, neuroscience, which is incredible. And really, so this year I've said to the team, I really want you to focus on looking at opportunities for I&D candidates such as, disability, even veterans who are really challenged, and obviously females from an equality perspective. So that's our recruitment arm. Our management consulting arm is, again, a little bit different, where we are really, really passionate about including capability uplift and mentoring and coaching in all aspects, which is great. None of my consultants are tasked to sell, so they are tasked to deliver exceptional work and really look at opportunities to, as I said, especially our government clients with different skills and different ways of thinking. Our leadership has evolved over the last probably 7 or 8 years, where we're working quite heavily with Griffith University on some enterprise architecture. And I said that from my experience, and everyone knows that I'm really passionate about leadership, I go, it just seems insane that there's so many one-day courses because most people cannot change in one day. And I kind of was applying some of what I was learning about neuroscience at that stage to really change mindsets and really make sure that I excelled at my best. And then we incorporated into our leadership training. So our leadership training is generally over 8 to 10 to 12 weeks. We've run it at the likes of Defence and Tax and Australian Digital Health Agency and Telstra, and all different types of leaders. And it's just so rewarding to see see the emerging stars and really leaving them with some really good tools on how to shift their behaviours. You got to remember that most people bring into an organisation some fairly heavy triggers or toxic behaviours, which sometimes they're not even aware of.
So this is sort of an age-old question, but do you think leaders are born or made?
I think that you can teach self-awareness and self-reflection practices. So I think sometimes, like myself, someone like myself had a natural aptitude to lead people. It was just something that came quite naturally to me. So I think there's definitely an element of people's personalities. But you can definitely teach techniques, and depending on where the individual that you're teaching is in their own journey, sometimes we teach people and they go, Kris, I don't even feel like I want to be a leader.
And not everybody does, yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. Sometimes
Absolutely.
just given the way that you go up an organisation, as you know, they're given anyone that's in a technical, and that's across the stack, like, whether it's, HR, whatever, IT or, finance or whatever it may be. Sometimes that your next role is to be a leader, and you may not want to be. You may be a technical SME.
And I read recently that a lot of organisations, the CEO, their succession planning is to their CFO, and the CFO is not normally the best person, or even the COO for that role, because they're much more technical, and they're not really specialised, I suppose, in leadership. So do you think leadership should stand on its own? What are your thoughts on that?
Like on its own, as in
that's the skill set that they look towards as over and above other things.
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I think it's difficult, and you're about to say we have an innovation hub within our team, and I've actually said and tasked my team in there to come away with some ideas, because I keep on saying, with leadership, how come we all keep on hiring the same type of individuals, especially at the high end, that don't have leadership skills? So I've tasked them to come away with some creative ideas on how do you actually interview and hire for high performance and leadership, because we can all sit here and say we're great leaders.
Yeah, it's actually living out that tests everybody. And Kris, when you went to ASPL, obviously that was an established brand. So how difficult was it going in there as their CEO and being that leader that everybody looked towards? What did you take to the role?
I think I took obviously the years of experience that I had. So it was more difficult initially, just from a market perspective, because obviously I had such a strong brand behind me previously. But in some ways, it was kind of exciting. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I still say now it's kind of really exciting that not everyone knows us. So you can kind of pitch, and you can kind of really be a little bit more different and unique.
And that was going to be my next question, because obviously, you've been with ASPL Group for 9 years and they've been around for quite some time. So how do you keep things new and interesting and engaging, and how do you yourself stay engaged in the role to keep pushing forward and to keep getting better?
As I said, I'm really, really passionate about change. So, and I love, I'm kind of an unusual CEO, because apart from being in lockdown like now, I travel every week, and so I get out there in front of people. I grew up in the US kind of background, which is quite common, whereas in Australia, a lot of C-levels don't leave their ivory towers. So I get out there, I speak to a lot of execs, obviously I train people myself, and having all those insights and dealing with people all the time gives me a lot of insights to know, and we adapt quite quickly to market changes of what people, like our clients, want. So that keeps it fresh. And I'm, of course, really passionate about next steps for us will be Asia. So we started that last year in Hong Kong just before COVID. And so, I mean, there's just so much to do. I know, and I'm a unique entrepreneur that drives my team insane at times, to be fair. Like I will come up with all lots of creative ideas, such as the other day. I have 2 EAs who run my life and they're incredible. I was like, I feel like we're good because we're doing so much in training. I'm like, we've created journals and things like that. And I'm really passionate Pilates and yoga individual. And I was like, do you think we could do a mat or candles or something? And they're like, Kris. So, yeah.
So obviously, you're passionate about change, but change makes a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. So how do you recruit people within your team that enjoy change, and if you've got people that don't like it so much, how do you help them overcome their fears of the unknown and to move forward and to be able to to continually change and grow and become better?
When I look to hire, it's all around high performance, and I also, being an exceptionally positive person, I look for positive mindset because culturally, I think it's just so critical. I always call it like an insidious snake if you have anyone that's negative. And that's just not within ourselves. Like we see that within our clients and just the ongoing challenges with trying to performance manage. I don't know whether you've ever had an opportunity to read the Netflix book, but like their culture is all based on that, which I absolutely loved reading and would encourage anyone to read. When we look at change within ourselves or within our clients, it's more trying to understand and spending the time to understand why people are fearful of it. A lot of the times, I think what happens out there is everyone just presumes they know, whereas we take the other side and we spend a lot of time on stakeholder engagement and really trying to understand to help someone evolve why that is so.
So obviously you said before about lockdown, and you're in lockdown at the moment. You're in Victoria. You just entered another 7-day lockdown. And there's been a lot of talk, obviously, because the last lockdown, was only supposed to be a few days. It lasted 100 and was one of the longest sort of lockdowns in the world. So how do you stay positive through things like that, which has just thrown your whole world into upheaval? How do you stay positive for yourself, and how do you encourage your team to stay positive through these ups and downs that you're going through?
It was, I was really concerned about mental health, to be honest, and I did a lot of speaking about it last year, especially because obviously we were in the longest lockdown of all, and I've got a large team here in Melbourne. So from trying to work through what worked best for them, I was kind of like doing all different types of things, being the person I am. So I was like giving them opportunities to have coaches come and talk to them. I was trying to get people to inspire them from around the country. Like, we've got some incredible facilitators that have been trained by Brené Brown, and just really just trying to mix it up. But what actually was the best thing that I did is I had a Pilates instructor who actually teaches me like locally, and I got her to do this whole set of, because obviously we're sitting for so long, I got her to do this whole set with the team of like, how are you sitting at your desk? And I probably should fix my posture now, and we all were like, we're all doing that. And then we did yoga all together, and that's probably mixing it up and doing different things like that really helped. And from my own perspective, I was, as challenging as it was actually, it was still quite privileged for me. Like I got 2 reformers in the house for the kids and I, as in Pilates reformers. I was working the whole time. I think Apple, my incredible, she's like my 4th child. My poodle just loved it. She loves this lockdown because she's like, could be glued to my hip. And then because I was training people and obviously facilitating workshops, like, we were dealing with people in India, for example, that are going through such a challenging time. So as much as it was hard, and it was hard because obviously I had teams out there and in the whole country that were out and about when we were, I still was trying to go, you know what, I'm still very grateful for now.
Absolutely.
And even now it's hard, but you know what, you just got to tone down stress because from my own perspective, because I deal in government, I do get frustrated with these situations. But in reality is I just try and make the most of it and just be grateful that I've got the kids and everyone's safe and healthy, and, you know, I've got Apple and just keep going.
Definitely. And it sounds like you continually innovate. So it sounds like your role as a CEO is one of innovation. You're continually trying to innovate and to change and to inspire. Is that how you feel? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I look at it in every element, whether it's with people, whether it's with engagement. So yes, I constantly look at ways that we can obviously assist. So I still have that mindset of, like, you know, how it's not so much, again, for me, it's more so I have deep empathy for people, and I also really want to look at, you know, well, how do we assist clients to get there?
So I wanted to ask you as well, what's your take on culture? Who creates the culture? Because it sounds like within your organization, you are really leading by example with the things that you do, and you're trying to create this fantastic culture. Do you think that the culture and the responsibility for the culture lies with the CEO, or where do you think it stops,
Yeah,
and who's involved in creating that culture?
I think that it's definitely lies with the CEO, and then it lies with the leadership team, and then obviously all the leaders that form that organization. The challenge is that a lot of CEOs always practice what they preach. Whereas
That is
the
too true.
opposite, I like everything. I try and do everything that I talk about because obviously, A, it's good testing ground, but B, you know, I don't want to just be out there spruiking about what we do and not being authentic.
Absolutely.
But a
Absolutely.
lot of people, honestly, Christy, still struggle with that. So as I said earlier, like if I said, you know, I want you, like, if you need to finish. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in any presenteeism. But you know what? We've grown up where we are expected to work long hours, and we are expected to be on call 24/7 with technology now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want, I really encourage all of my people to have conscious behavior in the workplace. As in, I'm going to be on, even if it's for 4 hours, whatever it may be, and I'm going to contribute and feel good about myself.
And I think that's what it comes down to. It's the actual contribution that you're making, not the actual
Yeah.
time. So, you know, definitely an output-driven
Yes.
outcome is much better. Just on your leadership team, your senior leadership team is 90% female. Was that by choice, or was that something that you carefully constructed?
No, it wasn't something I carefully constructed. But I feel like females are still struggling with leaning in. And I know I struggled with it a lot when I was younger. Like, I know that there's statistics out there that say, like, if I'm going to go for an executive role as a female, I want to tick every box. In what? Whereas a male may only tick one box.
Yeah.
So I definitely look to, and I really encourage my people by putting them outside their comfort zone at times, including obviously if I see like that they could be potential leaders, like allowing them those opportunities as well. But it wasn't by choice. It just happened that way, that I have so many incredible women working for me.
That's awesome. When ASPL is out there and they're working with their clients, you know, around that sort of, you know, where we need to tick every box when we're a female and men don't do that, do you work with companies so they can understand that the applicants that they're getting, they shouldn't necessarily just push to the side because they might not have it all? Do you sort of encourage them to really look towards the person as opposed to the skills, or do you think there's a fine balance between what they need to have depending on the role?
No, I absolutely encourage, obviously, to look at people coming through. And of all, it's not so much a female or a male. It's just the capability set. And I'm really vocal about. I also think that, unfortunately, out there, sometimes females don't support females. So I'm the complete opposite. And I'm kind of really interested, I'm sure you see this as well, Christy, because I'm of the view sometimes, you remember the whole school kind of behaviour that goes on with females, and I went to a private girls' school, so I saw a lot of it because it's females only. I sometimes feel like it creeps into the office.
Absolutely.
And I'm the first one to call it out.
Excellent.
And I see it all the time in our clients as well. So we talk about, and there's a long way to go with equality, but we also don't talk enough about that, to be honest. I really do call it out because you can see it happen all the time. Unfortunately, I don't know why. I'm not a psychologist, but I do have a lot of psychologists, but it is a common, unfortunate trend that you see. And a lot of my friends or of our clients who become my friends, female execs, honestly say to me time and time again that most women that they've worked for are not role models, which is really interesting.
It's interesting, and it's really sad as well, though.
Yeah, it's really sad. So I'd love to change that too.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on quotas? Do you think that we should have quotas, and do you think they're damaging to women that have already made it?
I don't believe, I don't know. Again, it's kind of back to it's like strategies, right? So everyone talks and goes, Kris, I can't make my I&D strategy stick. Same with quotas, right? Well, you have to prioritize it. That's why you can't make it stick. You know what I mean? It's nothing, like I'm not doing anything unusual. It's just a priority for me.
And so do you think, the companies that aren't sort of, I don't want to necessarily say hitting their targets, but that don't have that equality and equity within their organisation, do you think that falls back to the hiring practices?
That's
that
one
they're just
part.
not hiring the right people? And what are the other parts, would you say?
I think things like succession planning, calling out behaviours in the workplace, and allowing opportunity. Like you also have to, so say, for example, if you had someone with a disability or Indigenous, like you want to set them up for success, right?
Definitely.
Whatever it is, whatever. So you have to think it through. You're not just hitting the stats.
Well, absolutely. And then retention, I think, comes into that as well, because, you could hire, to hit those stats and then not retain the people, which is, both costly and, embarrassing potentially to your reputation.
Yep, spot on.
Well, Kris, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, because I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I think you're one remarkable woman, and, you're doing a lot to promote other women and, the right sort of leadership attributes. And I know you spoke earlier and you said you don't really have regrets, but I do have one final question for you before we go, and that is, what would you do differently if only you knew?
I probably would, as I said earlier, I probably would not overthink every scenario and feel guilty about not being in everywhere for, as I said earlier, for my kids and for work, and just that constant ongoing challenge we have as women that, mothers that are working.
Absolutely. And shout out to all the mothers out there that are working, because it is super hard. And look, Kris, I hope you enjoy this week at home with your kids and Apple and Angel, and stay safe in lockdown.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Christy.
Thank you so much. And look, if you'd like to know more about Kris and ASPL Group, you can check out aspl.net.au, and you can also follow Kris on LinkedIn and read more at ifonlyouknewpodcast.com.au. Thank you, Kris.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.